One of the greatest mysteries in aviation history may finally be solved. For decades, explorers have been trying to find the wreckage of aviator Amelia Earhart.
The new discovery, a drone's glimpse into history. For 88 years, the Pacific Ocean has kept one of the greatest mysteries in aviation locked deep within its depths. The disappearance of Amelia Earhart. Her name has echoed through history as both a symbol of courage and a haunting question mark. What really happened to the woman who tried to circle the world and vanished without a trace? Now, almost 9 decades later, that question may finally have an answer. A new generation of researchers believes they have found what countless explorers, historians, and scientists have sought for nearly a century: the wreckage of Amelia Earhart's plane, the Lockheed Electra 10E, resting silently on the ocean floor. The discovery began not with luck, but with technology. A research team from the Ocean Archaeological Research Foundation, working alongside experts from Purdue University, where Amelia once studied, was reviewing satellite and drone imagery of the South Pacific when they spotted something unusual. In the deep, blue waters near a cluster of remote islands, a shape appeared, long, metallic, and out of place. It was faint but distinctive, lying half buried in sediment. At first, they thought it could be a natural formation, perhaps coral, volcanic rock, or a trick of the light. But as the researchers enhanced the imagery and overlaid it with schematics of the Lockheed Electra, a chill ran through the room. The measurements aligned perfectly. The object had a fuselage, twin tail fins, and a wingspan nearly identical to Amelia's aircraft. Dr. Elena Morales, one of the lead researchers, described that moment as surreal. "We've seen hundreds of false leads over the years," she said, "but this one felt different. The geometry was too precise, the shape too intentional. It looked like it was built by human hands." Within weeks, the discovery was making headlines around the world. The team announced plans for an upcoming expedition, a joint effort between oceanographers, drone specialists, and aviation historians, to visit the site with autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with high-definition sonar and 4K cameras. Their mission to determine once and for all whether the mysterious shape was truly Earhart's plane. The coordinates of the site remain confidential, but sources close to the project describe it as being in the vicinity of Howland Island, the same tiny stretch of land that Amelia was desperately trying to reach when she disappeared in 1937. The ocean floor in that area lies nearly 5,000 meters deep, a crushing environment where sunlight never reaches and pressure can pulverize metal. Few expeditions have ever explored those depths, but modern technology has changed what's possible. With drones capable of operating autonomously for days, powered by artificial intelligence and sonar mapping, researchers can now sweep vast areas of ocean that were once unreachable. The team's excitement is tempered with caution. History has seen many false alarms in the search for Earhart. Over the years, blurry sonar images, fragments of metal, and even old photographs have been mistaken for proof, only to be debunked later. That's why this new expedition aims to gather irrefutable evidence, not just images, but material samples that can be tested and verified. Still, even skeptics admit that this find feels different. The anomaly's location, shape, and scale all match historical data from Earhart's final flight path. According to project documents, the object lies less than 100 miles west of Howland Island, an area long overlooked by previous search efforts. That region aligns perfectly with a navigational theory known as the dateline hypothesis, which suggests that Amelia's navigator, Fred Noonan, may have made a small but fatal error in time and location when crossing the international dateline. That error of just a few minutes could have pushed the aircraft dozens of miles off course, enough to place it exactly where the object was found. Even Rick Gillespie, the long-time head of TIGR's, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, a veteran of multiple search missions, couldn't ignore the coincidence. "We've spent 40 years studying this case," he said, "and we've learned one thing. The ocean doesn't give up its secrets easily. If these researchers found something in that area, it deserves serious attention." His tone was skeptical, but his curiosity was clear. Gillespie and his organization have led expeditions to nearby islands such as Nikumaroro, where fragments of aluminum and artifacts were once thought to be linked to Earhart's plane. But those claims were never confirmed. Now, the discovery of a large, intact aircraft structure near Howland suggests that the final chapter of the mystery might lie not on an island, but beneath the sea. The upcoming mission is expected to be the most ambitious search effort since 2012, when explorer Robert Ballard, the man who discovered the Titanic, led a deep sea search that yielded no conclusive evidence. This time, however, the technology has evolved. The Ocean Archaeological Research Foundation plans to use a fleet of underwater drones capable of live, streaming data back to the surface, scanning every inch of the wreck for identifiable features. The twin engines, the wing markings, the cockpit layout, or even serial numbers engraved into the Electra's frame. To aviation historians, the discovery would be more than just a technical triumph. It would be an emotional one. Amelia Earhart's disappearance has haunted generations because it represents both human ambition and human vulnerability. She wasn't just an aviator, she was a global icon who defied the norms of her era. When she vanished, the world lost not only a record-breaking pilot, but also a symbol of hope, freedom, and female empowerment. Her story has been told in countless books, films, and documentaries, but always with the same question mark at the end. If this discovery truly leads to her plane, that question mark could finally be replaced with a period. Dr. Morales, reflecting on the discovery, said something profound. "It's not just about finding metal under the sea. It's about closing a circle." Amelia's story began with the courage to explore the unknown. Maybe now, through technology and perseverance, we're bringing her home. The world waits with cautious optimism. The expedition is scheduled to begin within months, with several research vessels departing from Honolulu and Tarawa, loaded with robotic drones, sonar arrays, and deep sea recovery equipment. If successful, the team hopes to capture the first ever close-up footage of the wreck and possibly recover artifacts. A propeller, a nameplate, or even a fragment of the fuselage stamped with Lockheed's signature manufacturing code. Such evidence would not only rewrite aviation history, but also mark the end of one of the longest unsolved mysteries on record. As anticipation builds, the oceans themselves seem to hold their breath. For nearly a century, they've guarded the story of a woman who dared to fly beyond every boundary. Now, with machines reaching depths that human divers never could, that story may finally rise to the surface. It's fitting, in a way, that the mystery of Amelia Earhart might be solved not by luck or chance, but by innovation. The very spirit that defined her life. Her final flight was a leap into the unknown. And nearly 90 years later, that same leap, powered by science and curiosity, might finally bring her home. The world has waited long enough, and somewhere, deep beneath 5,000 meters of silent water, her plane, and her legacy, may still be waiting, too. Amelia Earhart, the woman who conquered the sky. Before Amelia Earhart became a mystery, she was a miracle, a living symbol of courage in a world that was still learning what women could be. Long before she vanished into the endless blue, she had already changed the sky forever. Her name wasn't just printed in newspapers. It was written into the hopes of a generation. And to understand why the discovery of her plane matters so deeply today, you have to know who she truly was. The woman behind the legend, the pilot who refused to stay grounded. Amelia Mary Earhart was born on July 24, 1897, in Atchison, Kansas. From the beginning, she was different. While other girls played with dolls, she built ramps and pretended her roller coaster was an airplane. Her father's job as a railroad lawyer kept the family moving from place to place, giving young Amelia a sense of restlessness that never quite left her. She loved books about explorers, adventurers, and war heroes, stories of people who dared to test the impossible. In 1917, during World War I, she volunteered as a nurse's aide in Toronto, caring for wounded soldiers. That experience changed her life. She saw men broken by battle, men who had faced death and refused to give up. It taught her something about fear, not to run from it, but to face it. And that lesson would later define her entire career. Her first encounter with flight came in 1920, when she attended an air show in California with her father. There she took a short 10-minute flight with pilot Frank Hawks. The biplane lifted into the air, and the moment the wheels left the ground, something in her soul caught fire. "As soon as I left the ground," she said later, "I knew I had to fly." From that moment, the earth would never be enough for Amelia. She took her first flying lessons in 1921 from Nada Snook, one of the few female flight instructors in America. To pay for the $500 training fee, Amelia worked as a photographer, a truck driver, and a stenographer, whatever it took. Within a year, she bought her own second-hand plane, a bright yellow Kinner Airster that she affectionately called the Canary. That small aircraft became her freedom. In 1923, she earned her pilot's license from the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, becoming only the 16th woman in the world to achieve that honor. But her path wasn't easy. In the 1920s, flying was still considered dangerous, and female pilots were treated as novelties rather than professionals. Airplanes were fragile, navigation was primitive, and a single mistake could mean death. Yet Amelia seemed to thrive on risk. She set her first altitude record in 1922, climbing to 14,000 feet, higher than any woman had ever flown. Her big break came in 1928, when she was invited to join a transatlantic flight organized by publisher George Putnam, the man who would later become her husband. Though Amelia didn't actually pilot the plane, her participation made headlines. Newspapers called her Lady Lindy, comparing her to Charles Lindbergh, who had famously crossed the Atlantic a year earlier. But Amelia wasn't satisfied with being a passenger. "I was just baggage," she said honestly. "Next time I want to do it myself." And 4 years later she did. On May 20, 1932, Amelia Earhart took off alone from Harbor Grace, Newfoundland, in her red Lockheed Vega and set out across the Atlantic. The flight was brutal: freezing rain, lightning, engine trouble. But after nearly 15 hours, she landed safely in a pasture near Londonderry, Ireland. She had done it. She had become the first woman, and only the second person after Lindbergh, to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. The world erupted in celebration. When she returned home, crowds filled the streets. President Herbert Hoover awarded her the Distinguished Flying Cross, the first ever given to a woman. Amelia's courage wasn't just admired, it was contagious. She became a global sensation, a fashion icon in her leather jacket and short hair, and a hero to millions of young women who finally saw proof that they could reach as high as men. But Amelia wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing possibility. She wanted to prove that women could do anything, go anywhere, and lead with the same strength and grace as any man. "The most difficult thing," she once said, "is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity." Through the 1930s, she continued breaking records. The first solo flight from Hawaii to California in 1935. The first of any pilot, man or woman. The first nonstop flight from Los Angeles to Mexico City, and then Mexico City to Newark. Multiple speed and distance records across the United States. Every flight pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Every landing proved a point about courage. Off the runway, Amelia used her fame for something greater. She co-founded the 99s, an organization for female pilots that still exists today. She wrote books and magazine columns promoting aviation and women's independence. She designed a line of practical yet stylish clothing for active women. Aviation inspired trousers, jackets, and scarves. And she lectured tirelessly across America, encouraging young girls to dream beyond the limits of society. By 1937, Amelia had become a symbol of modern womanhood. Strong, intelligent, independent, and utterly fearless. But even after everything she had achieved, she wasn't done. There was still one final goal she wanted to conquer: to become the first woman to fly around the world, following the equator, covering almost 29,000 miles. Her aircraft for the mission was the Lockheed Model 10E Electra, a twin-engine silver plane built specifically for endurance and distance. Its passenger seats were replaced with fuel tanks. It carried the latest navigational instruments available, though, by modern standards, they were primitive. With her was Fred Noonan, a veteran navigator known for his expertise in charting long-distance Pacific routes. Their first attempt began in March 1937, heading west from California toward Hawaii. But tragedy struck early. During takeoff at Luke Field, the Electra crashed and was badly damaged. Amelia and Fred escaped unharmed, but the plane needed major repairs. Many might have given up. She didn't. 3 months later, on June 1, 1937, they tried again, this time heading east. Starting in Miami, Florida, they crossed South America, Africa, the Indian subcontinent, and Southeast Asia. The journey was grueling, but they were succeeding. By the time they reached Lae, New Guinea, they had already covered 22,000 miles, nearly 2/3 of the globe. Ahead of them lay the most dangerous stretch, the vast Pacific. Their next stop, Howland Island, was a speck of land barely 1.5 miles long, their only refueling point before reaching Hawaii. Finding it would require near-perfect navigation across 500 miles of featureless ocean. Amelia knew the risks, but she was calm. In a letter to her husband before the flight, she wrote, "Please know I am aware of the hazards. I want to do it because I want to do it. Women must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be a challenge to others." Those words would become immortal. On July 2, 1937 at dawn, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan took off from Lae in their silver Electra. They waved to the ground crew, lifted smoothly into the sky, and vanished toward the horizon, chasing the sunrise, chasing history. That was the last time anyone ever saw them alive. But even before her final flight, Amelia Earhart had already achieved what she set out to do, not just to fly, but to inspire. She had become proof that dreams, no matter how impossible they seem, belong to anyone brave enough to chase them. And so, when the world lost her, it wasn't just mourning a pilot, it was mourning its bravest dreamer. To this day, she remains a symbol of human daring, the woman who conquered the sky and in doing so became immortal. The disappearance, the day the sky went silent. It was a calm dawn over the Pacific Ocean on July 2, 1937. The air was clear, the sea below looked endless and smooth, and the world's most famous pilot, Amelia Earhart, was on the final and most dangerous leg of her journey around the globe. She and her navigator, Fred Noonan, sat inside the cramped silver body of their Lockheed Electra 10E, engines roaring against the tropical air. They had already traveled more than 22,000 miles around the planet. Now only one major stretch remained, the 556-mile flight from Lae, New Guinea, to Howland Island, a tiny coral dot in the middle of the Pacific barely visible from the sky. The flight began early that morning. At 10 a.m., the Electra rolled down the runway, gaining speed until it lifted gracefully into the sky. The takeoff was smooth, and Amelia's voice came over the radio, steady and confident. "Position good, altitude 7,000 feet, she reported. Those listening could hear no hint of fear in her tone. After all, this was the part of flying she loved most: the rhythm of the engines, the endless horizon, the feeling that the entire world stretched open beneath her. But as the hours passed, the danger of the Pacific began to unfold. Unlike land routes, the ocean offered no landmarks, no mountains, no cities, only blue upon blue. Navigation relied entirely on celestial charts, radio signals, and dead reckoning. a precise but unforgiving science. A single miscalculation could mean drifting hundreds of miles off course. And in that era with no GPS or radar, those mistakes were almost impossible to correct. Amelia's navigator, Fred Noonan, was one of the best in the world. He had charted routes for Pan American Airways and helped map flight paths across the Pacific. But even he faced enormous challenges. Clouds covered the stars, preventing celestial readings. The sun's glare off the waves made compass readings unstable. And the radio system, already prone to interference, grew weaker the farther they flew from New Guinea. Meanwhile, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited near Howland Island. Its mission was simple: guide Amelia safely to the landing strip by maintaining radio contact and transmitting homing signals. The crew stood ready, straining their ears through the static. At first, faint messages came through, coordinates, bearings, brief check-ins. But around 7:20 a.m., Amelia's voice broke through with a worrying update. "One must be on you, but cannot see you. Gas is running low." Her signal was strong, suggesting she was nearby, but she couldn't hear the Itasca's replies. The crew transmitted instructions, coordinates, and weather updates, but her radio seemed locked in one-way mode. The sky above Howland was beginning to haze, and visibility dropped. They fired flares into the air. At 7:42 a.m., she transmitted again, urgent now but still calm. "We are on the line WET 57337. We are running north and south." And then, nothing. Silence. The last words Amelia Earhart ever spoke over the airwaves echoed into the static of history. At that moment, somewhere over the vast Pacific, her twin engines must have sputtered. Maybe the fuel tanks had finally run dry after nearly 20 hours in the air. Maybe they had missed Howland by only a few dozen miles. Close enough to feel hope, but far enough to lose everything. The Electra may have dipped toward the water, Amelia fighting to keep it level until the very end. Then it would have vanished beneath the waves, swallowed by 5,000 meters of silent darkness. When radio contact was lost, panic spread instantly. Within hours, the largest search operation in U.S. history was underway. President Franklin D. Roosevelt personally authorized the mission. 66 aircraft and 9 naval ships, including the battleship Colorado and aircraft carrier Lexington, were dispatched to scour the Pacific. They covered more than 250,000 square miles of ocean, searching day and night. For 16 days, the search continued. The Itasca circled Howland Island. Pilots flew grid patterns at low altitude, straining to see oil slicks or floating debris. Radio operators tried to detect faint emergency signals. At one point, several amateur radio operators in the U.S. claimed to hear distress calls, a woman's voice crying for help, giving coordinates, repeating, "We can't hold on much longer." But none could be verified. The Pacific gave nothing back. No wreckage, no life rafts, no trace of the two souls who had dared to cross its endless reach. By July 19, 1937, the official search was called off. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan were declared lost at sea. The world mourned. Newspapers around the globe ran the same haunting headline, "Amelia Earhart missing." But even as official hope faded, the fascination only grew. People refused to believe she could simply disappear. For years, rumors and theories filled the void. Some claimed she had been captured by Japanese forces after landing on one of their occupied islands, perhaps Saipan or the Marshall Islands, and executed as a spy. Others insisted she had survived, returned to the United States under a new identity, and lived in secret. The most persistent theory, however, was more grounded. It came from researchers who believed the Electra had missed Howland Island and crashed near Gardner Island, now known as Nikumaroro, about 400 miles to the southeast. In the decades that followed, the group TIJR, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, led 13 expeditions to Nikumaroro searching for evidence. They found curious artifacts: a piece of aluminum believed to match the Electra's construction, a woman's shoe from the 1930s, and a glass jar once used for freckle cream, a product Amelia was known to use. There were even reports of human bones discovered on the island in 1940, later lost and possibly belonging to a woman of Northern European descent. These findings were intriguing, but not definitive. The island was remote and harsh. Its shores were lined with sharp coral reefs, capable of shredding an aircraft during landing. Some experts believed Amelia may have tried to glide onto the reef, only for rising tides to drag the wreck into the sea days later. In 2012, ocean explorer Robert Ballard, who discovered the Titanic, led a deep sea expedition to search around Nikomaroro. He used advanced sonar and remotely operated vehicles. But once again, the ocean remained silent. Every theory circled back to the same question. Where was the plane? For decades, the world searched. From the 1930s through the 2000s, researchers mapped, scanned, and dredged thousands of square miles of ocean, but the mystery endured. The sea seemed to mock every effort, holding its secrets just out of reach. Then came a new idea, proposed by a former NASA worker and amateur pilot named Liz Smith. In 2010, she suggested that during the flight, Fred Noonan may have made a small but devastating navigational error while crossing the international date line. The confusion of time and longitude, compounded by exhaustion and poor visibility, could have thrown their road off by about 60 miles west of Howland. At first, her dateline theory was overlooked, but later researchers began to realize that this small correction placed the likely crash site directly in the area that modern sonar drones had barely explored. For over 80 years, that section of ocean remained untouched, a deep trench west of Howland Island, 5,000 meters down. And then, in January 2024, a sonar drone scanning that exact region captured something extraordinary: the unmistakable outline of an aircraft lying on the seafloor. A fuselage, wings, and twin tails identical in dimension to Amelia Earhart's Electra. After all the failed searches, all the theories, all the lost hope, the ocean had finally whispered back. The day the sky went silent might not remain a mystery much longer, because somewhere beneath the waves, resting in the deep, cold dark, lies the final chapter of Amelia Earhart's story, waiting, after 87 years, to be found. The deep sea revelation, a mystery on the ocean floor, 87 years after Amelia Earhart vanished into the endless Pacific. The world finally held its breath once again. For decades, the ocean had swallowed every trace of her story, refusing to give up a single clue. But in January 2024, a flicker of light appeared in that darkness. A sonar image that could change everything we thought we knew about aviation history. The discovery didn't come from a government mission or a global superpower. It came from a small but determined private company called Deep Sea Vision, based in Charleston, South Carolina. Its founder, Tony Romeo, wasn't an archaeologist or a historian.